This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Psychotherapist and author Siobhan Scot is joining us right now. We're going to do a little wrap-up conversation on the Scot Peterson trial. It's the first time we've had a chance to discuss this since the verdict came down the other week of not guilty on all counts. This, of course, Scot Peterson, not the other Scot Peterson that everybody thinks about. This is the other Scot Peterson, the one involved with the Parkland shooting massacre. He was the school resource officer who failed to act and protect the students' lives as he was assigned to do with his job to protect and to serve. Siobhan, what's your reaction to the verdict? Do you think justice was served?
You know, I think it was. I felt awful about that whole trial and the whole situation. We want to throw blame around when it comes to Nicholas Cruz and Parkland. Mm-hmm. But, you know, once we start going down that path, as I saw Scot Peterson, I'm sure if he had it to do over again, I think he was a confused cop. He wasn't sure where the sounds were coming from. There was a lot of testimony with people saying they couldn't tell where the gunshot sounds were coming from. So we're talking about a confused cop, a matter of minutes. The radios were not working. There were just a lot of things that I really felt like, you know, if he had it to do over again, he would do it differently. And I just sort of hated to see it come to the charges and the trial in that way. But when it comes to Nicholas Cruz and blame, you know, we can go back for his entire life and look at the various places where intervention could have happened that would have prevented Parkland. You know, the fact that he could buy a gun, a weapon of war, semi-automatic rifle on his 18th birthday, that he could post online, "I'm going to be the next school shooter," that a tip was made to the FBI naming him first and last name. The ball was dropped. You know, all the times his mother called law enforcement out to her home because he and his brother were chasing her around and smashing things with baseball bats. And the lady could not manage these kids. And there was nothing, no intervention, nothing happened. There was a piecemeal mental health system in Florida where the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. He never was tagged as the danger that he clearly was. You know, there was never any effective intervention. So when we want to start deconstructing Parkland, we can go back years and years and years and look at the path that led to the death of all those kids and their teachers. And it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy. But ultimately, I don't think the monster was Scot Peterson. The monster was Nicholas Cruz. And the system failed in so many ways in that life.
Without a doubt. I mean, the monster was Cruz. Scot Peterson was unfortunately the one that was charged with taking care of those students and preventing the monster from getting in, even though the monster, you know, did get in. What was your take on Scott's reaction to the verdict when he made a statement saying, "We've got our life back after 4.5 years"? You know, kind of, you know, fist raised, like we've done it. It's good. And I imagine if you're, you know, facing life in prison and then you find out you're not going to have to go do that, you would be emotionally happy. Is there a level of tone deafness to Scott, though, knowing that, you know, all these families lost their children and you're still kind of up there like, "Hey, yeah, we got our life back. I didn't protect your kids, but hey, we got our life back. It's going to be good." It just, I don't know. It's when I saw it, it rung to me of someone who just doesn't quite see the whole picture, if you will.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a fair critique. I don't know that he was the best cop. I don't know that he was the right cop for the job that day. Could somebody else have honed in better and done a better job? In all likelihood, yes. You know, but I mean, but we can find that in every profession, right?
Sure.
There are mental health therapists who shouldn't be mental health therapists. They're just not that well suited for it.
Yeah.
So I can say that about people I know. but I didn't feel like that trial was the best way to go about handling that. I was just sad to see the whole thing. And we're still left with feeling like there's no real closure about whenever there's one of the, Valde, these other ones were kind of doing the same thing, trying to deconstruct what law enforcement did or didn't do, and how do we do it better, and who's to blame. And it's just really a nightmare that we live in a country where we have so many of these things happen, and it just leaves everybody with a certain amount of trauma and feeling unsettled about it and not knowing where to put the blame. And that's a very dark thing.
That seems to be, it's almost like a cycle. You just keep going in this circle over and over where it's like, well, who do we blame? Even if we do find the boogeyman to blame here. And in this case, there was the murderer that was charged and tried and found guilty, but then you almost, it's still not enough there. Then it's not enough. Yeah, it's never
not
enough. And there probably really isn't ever enough to something like this, because it's just a tragedy. It's a trauma that will always exist. And do we go down the path of trying to find the boogeyman too often, even when we know who the real one is?
Right. And I think so often we're eager to find a boogeyman without looking at the way that the big issue, how our entire culture can contribute sometimes to things. And when it comes to Nicholas Cruz, there were so many factors: familial, biological, cultural, educational, mental health. There were just so many pieces. And so even when we find a boogeyman, it's still, even if that person is locked up forever, we haven't completely solved the problem.
You're locked into the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts, and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member, exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast, dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.